All right. Hi, everyone. Hello. Am I audible to all of you? Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Great. How is everyone doing? How has been the break for all of you? Were you able to complete all the assignments, or is anyone still lagging behind on any content? Dinesh, how come it's still pending? It was good. Thank you, Vinayak. Okay, let's get quickly started without taking up any more time, right? Since this is the kind of the start of the week, or you could call it the end of the last week, right? What I will first do is I will quickly share the timeline for today's week, right? For this particular week, for example, what exactly are we going to cover and what exactly can you really expect to do this week, right? And then we will move on to today's content, okay? Let me know when my screen is visible to all of you. All of you can see the screen, I believe. Okay. So I have kind of tried to fast track things a little bit. So today is 25 and we are going to cover functions today, right? And apart from that, we keep our classes on TTS, correct? Which is Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, correct? So which will be 27th, 29th, and 1st of July, right? So these are the normal week classes, which will happen on like TTS, okay, which is Saturday. On 2nd of July also, I might add a class, okay? I'll take a poll to see if everyone is comfortable to add another class on this day or not, okay? If everyone is comfortable, we will add a class on 2nd of July as well, okay? But if certain students are not available and a lot of students are like might miss, then we might not keep the class on that day. Okay, but I will take a poll before we actually take that decision, right? So that is first thing. The second thing is today we are going to cover functions, which is 80% going to be a theoretical class. So you just have to sit back and listen to what I'm really saying and understand everything, right? After that, we will be starting with arrays in the next session, right? We'll take an introduction to arrays. What exactly are arrays? How do you really use them? What's the purpose and everything related to that. After that, we will have a problem solving session, a complete problem solving session on arrays, where we will solve a bunch of problems related to arrays, right? And after that, we will have a session on 2D arrays, right? Or let's say we do 2 pointers first, okay? And we will talk about the entire concept of what is 2 pointers, how does it work. And this is again mostly a problem solving session where a simple concept like 2 pointers can actually be used to solve a bunch of problems. Okay. And if we do, let's say, keep a class on Sunday, we can start with 2D arrays on that day. Okay. And again, like I said, all these classes, which are the regular classes which we take, will happen from 9 to 11. Right. And if the Sunday class happens, I'll let you know the timings for that. Anyone has anything that they would like to say before we move ahead? Is the timeline clear for this week to everyone? Anything? Agreed, not agreed, yes, no, questions, no questions? Yes, like there will be recordings, right? I agree that, but again, like I said, some students do like to kind of come in the live classes to get their doubts cleared one-on-one and something like that. So that's why I will take a poll anyway, right? But we will take a class based on that, okay? Because I've added a bunch of extra classes, right? If you will see in your curriculum, there were only, I think, a single class on probably backtracking, okay? So I've added a bunch of more extra classes on backtracking as well in the course. So that is why I want to make sure that, we kind of utilize the times to do all those topics. Okay. Sure. Let's get started now. Let me share my iPad screen. Is there anyone who's coming for the class for the very first time? Because I know a bunch of students did enroll this week and last week. So there could be a bunch of students who are actually coming for the class for the very first time. All right. Okay, yeah, like I said, a bunch of student. Okay. Perfect. All right. Just give me a minute. Let me set up the iPad for all of you. Let me know when the iPad screen is also visible. All right. Should we get started then? Great. Okay, so welcome to today's session where we actually talk about functions as a concept today. Okay, we will talk about what exactly are functions. We will talk about the syntax of how do you exactly write functions in Java. And then we are going to talk about a few use cases related to functions. How do you really use them? And some more important concepts like method overloading or function overloading in the language Java. Okay, so first of all, let's really talk about the concept of functions. Okay, so if I really kind of, define this word functions a little bit. So functions and methods is basically a term people use interchangeably. So feel free to use the terminology that you're more comfortable with, right? But the idea is that a method or a function is basically a block of code that performs a specific task, right? Now, you must be feeling that what you have been doing so far are also blocks of code which were doing a certain task, right? What is really the need of writing your code in a certain different aspect named as functions? Okay, so for that, we will take a very good real life example. For example, you have to prepare tea. Okay, and all of you prepare tea, all of you drink tea, I suppose, right? Some or the other kind of tea. Okay, so let's say now I have to write instructions to probably make a masala tea. Okay, now what will be the instructions for that? First of all, I will take a pan, correct? Second of all, I will boil hot water, right? Third, I will add tea leaves, right? And so on would be some more set of instructions that would come for masala tea, and the people who drink masala tea would be basically using these instructions. Okay. Now, let's say I don't drink masala tea and I probably drink green tea, right? Now, don't you think even for a green tea, the few set of instructions would be same, which is in green tea also, I would be taking a pan. I would be kind of boiling hot water here also. And I would be adding a different tea leaves, right? A different set of tea leaves, but I would be actually adding tea leaves here as well, correct? After that, some instructions might change. For example, in green tea, you don't really put sugar, but in masala tea, you may or you may not put sugar, right? So certain set of instructions will be same in both the processes. Some might be different as well, okay? Now, let's say another person comes and say, I don't really drink green tea, okay? I actually drink black tea, right? And you have to write the instructions as a programmer, or let's say as a chef, right? You should be able to know the recipe for all the possible type of teas that are possible to make. So here also, you will take a pan, right? In black tea also, you will boil hot water, right? And here also, you will be adding tea leaves, right? Again, it might be the case that for masala tea, you might just boil for water for 3 minutes, right? And then you will add milk, right? In green tea, you will not add milk and probably, let's say you boil for 5 minutes, right? And so on like that. But the very purpose why I'm telling you this is, what you will see is that there are certain set of instructions, right? Let's say this is the program to make masala tea. This is the program that you're writing to make green tea. This is the program that you're writing to make black tea. What you will notice is across multiple programs, or maybe in a single program also, there will be scenarios where a certain set of instructions are basically same and repeating multiple times. Okay. And that is point number one, that there are certain set of instructions that are repeating. Another thing is, for example, initially that the code that you wrote basically has, let's say, initially at your kitchen, you just have a small pan. So what you did was, in all the instructions, you basically wrote small pan, okay? But now what happened was, there was a lot of issues using a small pan to make tea, and you actually bought a big pan or a large pan. So what you will do is, now you will have to make changes in all the programs by going to all of them one by one and replacing all these lines one by one. And instead of small, let's say if there are 5 types of teas, you will make changes to all the 5 programs. Okay. These are the situations where the concept of functions really steps in. Okay. So what does the concept of functions really says is that if, let's say, there is certain set of piece of code, right, that performs a certain task and is kind of being used multiple times again, what do you do is, don't write it again and again, right? Just take a common place or just pick up one particular place, write all those instructions in a single place over here. Take a large pan, boil hot water, add tea leaves, okay? And basically, you have this certain set of lines which you know are repeating. Write them in one single place. Give all these instructions a common name. For example, this is initial steps to prepare tea. Okay, and this is sort of like a function over here, that is a block of code that performs a certain task. And instead of writing all of these lines again and again, right, what do you do is just simply write this name over here. Right, just write this single statement at all the places wherever you need to execute them. Don't worry about the syntax, what I'm writing, just understand the concept. Syntax and everything, I'll explain it to you. Why I'm writing a certain bracket or anything. That will come in the syntax part. First, we are understanding the concept. Okay, so now what will happen is, you will start the program for masala tea. You will see that, okay, it basically calls another or redirects you to another set of code, right? It basically redirects you to another piece of line. You go over here, you check, okay, this is where you come in. You have to execute these 3 pieces of statement, and then you have to go back and you have to start executing from where you left. Okay, so you basically start your program, you check the line, you complete all the instructions in that function, and then you come back and execute right after this function name. Okay, and you keep doing the same for all the functions. Now, this kind of a way of writing code is again the same thing. The same set of instructions are executed now also. But in this case, you have two advantages. Advantage number one, right? You don't have to write a lot of redundant code again and again, right? You just wrote all that same code in one single place. Here it is 3 lines, but usually it could also go up to 20 lines, 30 lines, right? Where there could actually lead to a lot of redundancy. You don't have to do that, right? You just have to simply write all of them in one place, give all these set of statements a common name, which in this case is called function name, right? And just write that function name in your program wherever you want to do this. This will basically take care of the redundancy issue. Advantage number one. Advantage number two, now don't you think, for example, if I was using small pan and I had to upgrade it to a large pan, I had to do 3 changes. In all the programs, in all the 3 programs, I had to go and replace the line small pan to large pan, right? But when we are writing real life code, we may miss a particular function, right? Or we may miss a particular place. But if you are using the concept of functions, it's just that you just have to go to that function and just do a one single change, and it will automatically get replicated to all the functions. Because when you actually call a particular program, you go to this line itself, right? And here you will see that the small has been upgraded, changed to large, and you will just execute it. So two major advantages of using this particular way of writing code. First being that actually your code becomes more readable also. So in terms of readability also, your code becomes better because you know that these are the initial set of instructions to prepare tea. Point number two, your code becomes reusable. It is readable, right? And second, the code is reusable. Now, reusable is again kind of working on two concepts. That is easy to update the code, right? And it's easy to reduce the code redundancy as well, right? So in both the cases, this is why, or I would say this kind of an example kind of highlights the fact why you take a certain set of piece of statements, bind it under in one common place, give it a single name. In this case, it was initial steps to prepare tree, call it a function, and then just start using that function everywhere. Okay, how do you actually write a particular piece of statement together? How do you give it a name? How do you use those name in functions is what I would say the demo of functions as a concept we'll talk about. But this kind of example highlights the purpose or the reason why we write code using functions and what are the advantages of that. Is this clear to everyone? Anyone has any questions? Then I'll start with a little bit of demo and kind of show you on IntelliJ how exactly everything is working. Just keep writing quick yeses in the chat so that I know everyone is clear, and I'll just keep moving forward. Okay. So let me just complete, for those of you who are attending the session for the very first time, usually I teach a topic, take 15-20 minutes to kind of teach myself, and then we take questions. If nobody has any questions, we move ahead and start, taking a demo and see how exactly the functions work. Okay. Okay, so now that we are clear what exactly the reason for introducing functions is, now would be a good time to actually go ahead and start taking a demo and understand how does the concept of functions really work. So over here, this is our new session. L6. Functions demo. I'll zoom in a little bit so that everyone can see. Okay, so like I said, for every program that you write, you always need to have a main function, which is actually the starting point of your code. That is over here. Okay. And now let's say you need to basically add two numbers. Okay. So what I will do is, let's say, even before that, I write a simple function which just says hello. Okay. For example, you're making an application, or maybe let's say a chatbot, which always has to say hi to every new customer who wants to, let's say, raise a query. Okay. So how do you really write a function? First of all, you have to kind of write public static in front of it, right? For the time being, the meaning of public static won't be explained right now because it is related to OOPS concept, similar to how we did not explain it over here as well. So for the time being, just assume that in front of every function, you will have to write public static. Why do we do that? And what does it actually do is what we will kind of understand in future classes, but understand from your way easily. So void is something what your function really returns to you. Okay, this will also become clear in 10-15 minutes. For the time being, just assume that you have to write void over here, right? And then you have to write the basically the name of the function. Whenever we try to give a function a name, we try to keep it very descriptive. We try to usually give a name which defines at exactly what the function does. So let's say the function says hello to everyone. So I will say hello. Okay. So after that, you just put these two, I would say, brackets over here, right? And then you put, I would say, two curly brackets as well. Okay. So if you will see, this public static void main was also a function only. Okay. Although its nitty-gritty details will be discussed, but know that you basically mention here the return type, what exactly your function returns. For the time being, just keep it void. Then we write the name of the function. The name of the function usually is something that what exactly the function does. Then you put these two brackets over here like this. And then you basically put curly brackets, and in between these curly brackets is what your code actually does will be written. Okay. So over here, let's say my function say hello to everyone. So I will say hello to you. Okay. And this will simply the statement which here. So this is that piece of code which we wrote, right? That initial steps to prepare T line. That is what this function is, right? For the time being, this function is having a single line only. Let's say probably we add another one. Hope you're having a good day. Okay. So these are the two lines which I have kind of clubbed together in a function. They perform a very specific task of, let's say, greeting customers. Okay. It performs a specific task of greeting the customers. Right now, I have to use this function, right? If I will just do this, let's say I run this piece of code. Nothing will happen. You will see. Okay, you will see nothing basically got executed. Why? Because you just have done the declaration of the function. Okay, you have just defined, or you have just clubbed those statements together, right? When you talk about functions, or when you talk about methods, this is the process of declaring a function where you have specified what exactly are the statements which are present inside the function. So this is the process of declaring a function. And you will see over here, even IntelliJ is very specifically telling you no usages, meaning that you just wrote something over here, but you never really used it. That is why even the name of the function is grayed out a little bit. Okay. If you really want to execute this function and make sure these statements are called, what do? You take the function name, right? You put those two brackets over here, which you have put over here as well, right? And then you just put this, right? Now your function would be called. To actually show you how exactly the flow of the code is working, I'll add a bunch of more extra lines. Okay, so let's see now what the flow of the code will be. Let's me execute this code. Okay, so what happened was, like I said, public static void main function is basically the starting point of the code. Line number 6 does not has anything. Line number 7 basically has this line, which is a print line. So that's why let's get started basically got printed. Then what you're doing is you're basically calling a function. Okay, this is called calling a function, right? Now, in this case, what happens is you are basically calling greeting customers over here. And that is why the moment you call greeting customers, the flow of the code immediately comes over here. Okay, so you are at greeting customers. There is a certain set of line that happens over here, right? There is a particular way we are calling a function. So when you call the function, you break the execution of the code from line number 9 and immediately jump to line number 14. Okay, so that is why over here, now your code will come to line number 15. It does not have anything. Line number 16 will say hello to you, right? Line number 17 will say hope you're having a great day. Line number 18 does not have anything. And then line number 19, your function is finished. This was the starting point of your function. This is the ending point of your function. What you wanted to execute is what you have already executed. Now what you do is, which line will you directly jump to? You will directly jump back to line number 9 again. You broke off from line number 9 and came to line number 14 to start your function execution. The moment you complete your function execution, you break off from line number 19, which is the last point of your function line, and then you basically go back to line number 9. There is nothing else on line number 9. So what you do is you go to line number 10, you start the normal flow of execution of code, which says see you soon, right? And after that, line number 11 is there, which is kind of the ending of public static void main function. That means your flow of code is basically completed. Okay, so this is how the calling of method actually works, right? You start off from a particular position, right? You start off from a particular position. Whenever you execute or you come across a function call, you break off your code, go to that function call, execute those line of statements in that function. And when it's completed, you go back again to the line from where you really started the function call and then execute the lines post that. Okay, so this is how the concept of function declaration. And once you declare a function, how do you call a function? The concept for that works. Clear to everyone? Sonal, Java is a compiled language. Okay, so it's not interpreted language where you go line by line and then you do it. Okay, first the code is entirely compiled, so that means all the functions are being represented. Once the entire code is compiled and all of it is correct, then you start executing the function. Okay, so the order does not matter over here. Everyone is clear how exactly the function calling and how exactly the function declaring works? Then I'll just go a little bit deeper into some of the concepts over here. Awesome. Okay, so after this, functions are actually not this simple like they really look right now. Okay, they can actually be used to do a lot more, slightly more complex things than what we just saw. Okay, for example, your use case has a scenario where you constantly have to add a bunch of numbers. Okay, so what we can do for that is, again, just write public static void. Okay, then there is a function where exactly you have to add two numbers. Okay, so we will say add numbers. Okay, and what you do is you have to basically add two numbers. Okay, so for adding two numbers, you need to know those numbers as well, which needs to be added. And that is where the concept of parameters really steps in. Okay, so what happens in the concept of parameters is that you can add a bunch of variables, or you can add, or you can send a bunch of variables or pass a bunch of variables to a function which the function can then use. For example, I do int value 1 and then I do int value 2. So what this function basically does is it will add the two numbers which you want, but you will have to send those numbers to this function in order for it to be really add them. Okay, that is what exactly it means. Now what happens is, let's say I do int sum equal to a plus b. Okay, here a is val1 and it is val2. Okay, so you have these two numbers, and now what you can do is you can just print the summation for both of them, right? Now, how do you execute functions like these? You basically again call the function name, and then now you have to pass the two numbers which you want to be added. For example, I want the addition of 25 and 10. So like I said, this is the concept of parameters. By comma separated values, you send in a bunch of values which needs to be added. So 25 now will be stored in val1 variable, 10 will be stored in val2 variable. Okay, and these two variables, val1 and val2, are local to this function. Okay, outside of this, for example, outside of this function, one second. Let's say here I do this val1 or val2. What you will see is outside of the scope of these functions, these variables are not recognized. Nobody knows what these functions really are. Okay, only inside this function, in between these set of lines, is what these variables val1 and val2 are really recognized. Okay, so now if I will run this, you will see 35 is printed, which is indeed correct. And how did it really happen? We left off the code at line number 10, which says see you too soon. Then you called the function add numbers. You passed two parameters, 25 and 10 over here, right? So val1 basically took the value 25, val2 basically took the value 10. You do int sum is equal to 1 plus val2, which gives 35 over here, and which you printed, right? So the idea being that when you use functions, you can actually pass certain values to a method, and we can pass any number of arguments. Here I've just added val1, val2. Feel free to add int val3, int val4, so on like that. There is no limit over here. Okay, so functions also work in this concept, and it's very easy to use these now. Okay, so let's say now I have to add 5 and 10. See, I don't constantly have to write 5 plus 10, 25 plus 10. And again, like I said, a very important concept of readability as well. We want to add two numbers, which the numbers are 25 and 10. So the code looks better to in terms of when you're reading the code, right? It doesn't look very confusing, and there are not a lot of lines which needs to be put over here. And what you will see is continuously this function is being called. Here the function is called 3 times with 3 different set of parameters, and those values are basically getting added, and then those values are basically printed. Okay, so this is how exactly you do create functions, and then you are also able to pass parameters to all of those functions. Clear to everyone? I'm not getting a lot of yeses. That means some people are confused, I believe. Awesome. Okay, so now let's go and talk about another important concept, which is the return type. So far we talked about the function name. We talked about the function parameters, right? And then we talked about the function body. This is called the body of the function. Now, if you will go back to your public static void main, this is actually nothing but a function only. Void was the return type, which we will talk about in detail now. Main was the name of the function, and this was actually a parameter which was passed to the main function. This is nothing. This string, square brackets and R's is nothing but an array of strings which is being passed. Okay. That is why in the very first class I was saying that just for the time being, just remember the concepts. As we will move forward, they will start making sense, right? That is what I was saying. Now that you know the concept of functions, you will be able to now recognize that, okay, yes, now main is the name of the function. This is all the body of the main function. And here a parameter has been passed, right? The syntax for this will become more clear when in the next class we will do arrays, right? But understand that this is a parameter which has been passed to the main function. Okay. Next thing which we talk about is the concept of return types. Okay. Now let's take another example. Now I have to add the two numbers. Okay. The use case is still the same, but I just don't want to print the result. Okay. I want to return the result from this function and store it in a variable in main function. That is where the concept of return types basically steps in. Okay, so what happens is return type means if your function is doing something in return, what exactly is it really going to do? For example, if you go back to the example of creating tea, my function initial steps to prepare tea, what was it doing? It was boiling hot water and the tea leaves were added in it. So the output of that function was that I will have a pan of boiled water with tea leaves in it, right? So over here also, let's say I want to add the two numbers and I don't like void is not returning anything. But in this case, I want to return an integer value. So I will write int. And what I will do is I will say return, because like I said, the output of I want this function to produce an output, which is the variable which is going to have the sum of two numbers. And now what will happen is I can do int result over here. And then I can do res. I will comment these lines for now. Okay. So now let me explain you the flow of code, what is really happening. Now what happened was, first of all, like I said, always your RHS will be executed in terms of variable assignment. Also, it happens. Your RHS line is executed and whatever is the output of RHS is basically stored in LHS. So what will happen is you will go to line number 10, see you soon will be printed. Then you will basically execute the right hand side, which will be add numbers function will be called and you will be redirected to this function. Both the parameters 25 will be val1, 10 will be val2. And now you are adding both the numbers, which is val1 plus val2, storing it in a variable sum, which is 35. And then I am saying that return 35 from this function. Now, no, I cannot put char over here. Okay, because I need to mention the proper return type, right? The data types should match over here. I am returning something of an int data type. So I am going to here write the name of the variable which I am returning. And here I'm going to mention the return type. What is the type of the value which is being returned? And what will happen is this particular function is now going to return the value 35, which value is now going to be stored in the res variable. It is going to be stored in the res variable, which is the variable. Then I am after that print. Okay. So here you will see 35 is there. Okay. So the difference between the previous code and this code is, right, the sum value, which was basically there. Again, it was a local variable, right? For example, if I, let's say, let it be over here. In fact, let's say instead of this, I go back to my previous code and just write sum. What will happen is in both the cases, some value is being printed. But the thing is the summation result, which is the value 35, is restricted to this function, right? In no way in this particular function, I will have the access to the value 35. Okay. I have the value 35 and it just got printed over here, right? The moment this function basically got finished, the existence of the number 35 also went away with that, right? What if I actually needed this sum value to do some more computations on top of it, right? So in that scenario, I need that variable or that value 35 outside of this function as well. In those cases, you use the concept of return type, okay, where you just don't want the existence of the output of the function to remain inside the function. You want to be able to use that output of a function in other scenarios as well, and maybe do some more computations on top of it. And in those particular situations, what do? Is you use the concept of data types. Clear to everyone? Anyone with any questions? Anyone would like to ask anything? सबको समझ आ रहा है? Anyone feeling who's completely lost and maybe I'm not able to explain anything? So if your function is not returning anything, you just put void, which has been done over here, because main function does not return anything. But if the functions that you are writing on your own, yeah, that means they are called user defined functions. Okay, I hope this is clear. And now, like I said, if the function is created by your own, those are called user defined functions, because those functions are not existing as such. You have created that function on your own. Okay, and now on the screen, what you will see is, except from add numbers and from greeting customers and the function main add numbers and greeting customers, there is actually another function in this particular program file as well. Is anyone able to recognize it? Apart from main add numbers and greeting customers, there is another function in this particular program. Is anyone able to identify it? Very good. Right. That is what, like, you will, when you will kind of dig a little deeper, you will identify that, don't you think this written print ln over here, right? And then again, those two brackets over here, and then it's some as a parameter passed over here. It is nothing but sort of like a function only, right? And when you kind of hover over it, you will actually get to know as well that it is actually a function, public void print ln, and then a argument of string needs to be passed. So this is a function which is predefined. Okay, you did not create this function. Java as a language provides you this function by default. These are called standard library methods, which are already there. But functions like add numbers and greeting numbers are what you actually created. Okay, so these are the two different types of functions are there. If you will double click on that, you will actually go to the implementation of that particular function as well. That the function is public void string. It expects a string as an argument. That is why we have been sending strings only as an argument, right? And then in that, there is a certain piece of code that has been written. So this is a library code. Like I said, library code is something which the code that has already been written and you can directly just use it. Okay, so understand that print ln is actually also a function. Clear to everyone? Ma'am, basically, whenever we want to return something and if we want that output, then we always want to store it in one variable. Yes. So if, for example, here my function is returning the value. So understand, let's say I was doing some computations over here. Let's say I was doing multiply also, val1 into val2. Okay, I cannot just to return the multiplication value also and summation value also. A function can only return a single value. Okay, a function cannot return multiple values, and whenever you return something from a function, it actually gets returned to the function which basically called it. Okay, so the output of the add numbers is basically now stored in the res variable. Clear, Akshay? Any other questions? Awesome. Okay, so I hope this is clear to everyone. Next, what I will do is I will talk about a few small concepts. They are very important from an interview perspective, because a lot of times students get confused between them, right? And they're quite relevant in terms of from MCQ rounds also, as well as aptitude rounds. And sometimes interviewers ask these small things as well, and student kind of get confused a lot between them. Okay, so these are small concepts which we will quickly cover. First of all, two functions can have the same name, but if they have different parameters. For example, public static int add numbers with two values being passed, and public static int add numbers like this. Both the functions are completely valid. Java compiler will not get confused between them, and you can actually call both over here. For example, I do this and I do this. Okay, the redirection is actually very simple, right? What will happen is this will res2. Over here, and this will work absolutely fine, right? First, you will call add numbers, which will basically call this function, because the compiler is smart enough to know that, here two parameters are being passed. So definitely this is not the function I want to call. Val1 and val2 I passed, and basically res got printed. Okay, next is what you have add numbers function. Although the name are same, but since the number of parameters are different, okay, this is a method with two parameters. This is a method with no parameters. Java as a language is able to differentiate between both of them very easily, and it will basically know that res2 basically needs to be printed. Okay, so two functions can have the same name provided they have different number of parameters being passed to them. Okay, so in this case, both of them actually works absolutely fine without any issues whatsoever. Clear to everyone? Bobby, we will come to that as well. Don't worry. I will show you the example of default parameters as well. Okay. Next thing is, what if I do a mistake a little bit? What will happen if, let's say, this kind of a function basically expects two parameters, val1 and val2, and even those parameters have to be of the type int. What if I pass something else? Will it take automatically, or will it kind of throw us an error? It will throw you an error. Okay, if a function basically expects an argument int, it has to be of the type int only. If you will pass another parameter, it will not accept it at all. Okay, so make sure the data types of the parameters are also exactly the same. Okay, apart from that, there are some more functions which are already predefined functions which are available as well. For example, let's say you want to find the square root of something. So there is a function which is math.square root, right, which is available. What it will basically do is, let's say you want to find out the square root of a certain value, right? For example, you want to find the square root of 4, right? This is a function which has a return type, right? So this will be returning you something which you can actually store as an output in the answer variable, right? And then you could basically print it. Okay, so this is how exactly I would say a lot. So this is, if you will actually go to the math class, you will see a bunch of more of them. Again, it's a library method which has been defined, which can actually help you to do a lot of operations. So if you want to find the tan value, cos value, sin, sine, cos, right? If you want to convert something to degrees, right? If you want to find the square root of something, if CBRT is, I think if you want to find the cube root of something, yes. So you can see a lot of mathematical operations you usually do not have to do. They have already been defined. Okay, so this is how exactly the concept works over here. Make sure that you have to import these libraries before you actually use them. So this is, let's say, it is present in the package java.language. So you will have to import this first, right? And then you will be able to. We will see a lot of examples in future where we are using a bunch of library methods also, and you will have to do a proper import as well in order to be able to use them. But the idea being that there are a lot of predefined functions, library defined functions, and you may write your own functions based on your use case as well. Puneet says, will they also throw error if two functions have same name and different argument types? Puneet, do you mean this, that this you mean? It will not throw any error. Okay, because compiler as something, it can easily recognize that, okay, although the number of parameters are same over here, but the data type is different, which is it is expecting, right? So it will be able to identify. I will show you a few more, I would say, permutations and combinations as well. Okay, this is a basic example I gave. I will also show you how it works on the concept of data types and all, and how does the differentiation work. But I think this is what you were asking, right? Yes, so this will not throw any error. Okay, this will work like a charm. Is everyone clear with the very basics of functions? Anyone has any doubts, anything that they would like to ask? Any questions maybe on the usability of functions? Why exactly functions are being used and what really is the use case? We can also now see a very good example of code reusability as well. Okay, for example, you have to, find out the square value of all the numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, you have to find out the square for 1, square for 2, square for 3, square for 4, and square for 5. Okay, so you don't have to actually keep on writing the square function again and again. What you could really simply do is, let's say int I is equal to 1, I is less than equal to 5, I plus plus, right? And then let's say I want to get the square value of all the numbers from 1 to 5, and you will just pass the parameter I over here, right? And what you will do is you will define a square function, public static int, it is a return type, get square, the name of the function. This function kind of is expected to be passed a value x, for which you will return its square. So a maybe slower way of writing the code is this, int res, that you will kind of try to find the square, store it in a variable res, and then maybe return that variable, right? But here a more easier way or a more faster way to write this could be directly as well. Okay, where you are doing like this. So return x into x. So what will be happening is you pass a value, let's say 2. So 2 into 2, 4 will basically be returned. Okay, so that value will basically be coming over here at line number 21, where I will be storing a result over at this position, right? And maybe then I could print that square of I is so you will see now, earlier if functions would not have been present, you would have to write the code again and again. for writing the square of the values from 1 to 5. But now with the use of function, it actually becomes very, very easy and a lot quicker, a lot more reusable and readable to basically write codes in this format. Okay, and this kind of talks about the story of functions in a very basic concept. Clear to everyone? Vinayak, we will come to all those examples. Those examples come under the concept of method overloading. Okay, so I will, like I said, Abhi, I've just given a very simple example of very simple concept of functions. Method overloading kind of talks about all of these concepts in great detail. Everyone is clear? Do you want to take quick minute to kind of try out as well? And meanwhile, I will take doubts in the chat if there are any. Ma'am, I always confused, just to repeat the thing in line number 22. Line number 22, this is a string which you have, and you basically have the variable I over here. So you're just printing the value of I, and then you have a string. So this, all of it basically got concatenated as one single string with the values of I basically got printed, and these are variables. If you have a doubt, I would recommend that. I think this was the class where we actually talked about we talked about this concept in great detail. So if you have maybe a doubt or a question, right, you can always go back to this session and kind of revisit these concepts. So it just talks about the concept of typecasting in the pyramid-like structure, what sits on the top and what gets typecasted to exactly what. Okay. All right, everyone is done. Do you guys want to take a quick 2-3 minutes break and maybe try out on your own? And then we will talk about the concept of method overloading. And then we will solve a question also to kind of concretize the concept that we just learned. Okay. So it's 3:08. Please go ahead and maybe write an example or a code for get square only if you want. Others, if you want to take a quick 2 minutes break, you can do that as well. Drink some water, and then let's meet back at 3:30. All right, everyone is back. All right, okay. So I hope everyone is clear with the concept that we did so far. Next, what we will do is we will talk about the concept of method or function overloading. Okay, we'll talk about what exactly that concept is, right? And what exactly are its use cases. And it will kind of extend the 2-3 examples of functions, different parameter types, and different number of parameters, which we just talked about. Okay. So if I have to first give you again a very bookish definition of method overloading, what we basically say is that in Java specifically as a language, 2 or more methods may have the same name, okay? If they can take the same name, if they differ in parameters, and what kind of difference? Different number of parameters, right? Or I would say different types of parameters, like the data types of those, or both. If these differences exist, then 2 different functions can have the same name. Okay. If that is the case that happens, these methods are called overloaded methods, right? And this feature in itself is called method overloading. Okay. For example, void, I'm just showing an example, void function, something over here. Okay. This is a function named void. Return type is void. And let's say I do int a. Okay. And then let's say I do double a. Okay. And then let's say I do int a float b. Okay. All of these are completely valid. Okay. You will see over here that the function method is actually overloaded. These methods have the exact same name, but they accept different arguments. Okay. Over here, also, let's say I do and move ahead one more thing and do this. Okay. So what is important to note over here is that the return types of these methods are not the same. Okay. It is because method overloading, it is very important that I'm writing, and this is kind of asked a lot. Method overloading is not the way of having different functions the same name is not associated with return types. That means if you will write a function like this, this is not overriding, or this is not overloading. Okay. In this case, the return thing is different, rest everything is same. Okay. This kind of a concept will not work because return type is something which comes at the very end. Once you have created the function, once you have done all the operations, and then the return type comes at the very end. right? When the function calling will basically happen, since both of the function have int a in them as parameters, the data type is also same, and then the variable also is same, then like I would say, when you're calling a function, it will not be able to differentiate between the function at the line 16 and 17. Okay, so that is why I've written, this is a very, very important point. Method overloading is not associated with return types. It's only associated with different number of parameters and then different types of parameters, or a combination of both of them. Okay, overloaded methods, I will write over here just to explain it this a little bit more. Overloaded methods may have the same or different return types. Okay, these two methods, they have the same data type, the same return type, which is valid, but they must differ in parameters. Okay, this is a case where both the functions do not differ in parameters at all. That means this is not a case of overloading, right? Return type could be same, could be different. It's your choice whatsoever you want to keep. Overloading does not depend on that, but the overloading does depend on your parameters. So the parameters have to be different. Okay, so this is a very, very important concept whenever we talk about method overloading. And this example is being asked a lot. Okay, in MCQs also, they will give you 4 cases and they will ask which exactly is not a valid scenario of method overloading. And you will have to kind of, know these concepts of method overloading in order to be able to give the right answer. Clear to everyone? If that is clear, then I will show you some examples to kind of also understand from a real life perspective, how do you really see a use case for method overloading. Okay, what I've seen you right now is just a demo. Okay, but in AlgoCamp, we don't learn through just like, concepts. We want to see a proper real life use case of a method overloading being used, and really the advantage of keeping 2 functions with the same name. Correct? So let's do that and let's see, right? Let's actually see all this concept of method overloading in action and see why exactly it is like, really crucial and how exactly it's really helping. Okay. For example, you have your main function. Okay. And what you want to do is you kind of want to format the numbers in this function. Okay. So what you will do is, because the objective is same, like I said, the name of the functions is always descriptive on what the function really does. So because all the functions which I will now write will do formatting only, so I will keep their name same. So this function kind of expects integer value, and I will do string dot format. So I will pass basically an integer value and I will do a format. So what does the format function basically does? It basically calls a function which will kind of expect a string as an argument in which you really want to do the conversion. And then it will also expect like an object or some value where that is being passed. This is the format in which I need the output to be, and then I will pass the value. If you ever want to kind of see. Okay, so there are very good written documentations for everything. This is the function I have called, which is the format function. What it will return, it will return a formatted string, and the objective of the function is to return a formatted string using the specified format that I have passed, format string that I have passed, and the arguments. Okay, the format, so you pass 2 arguments. First, you pass the format over here, and then you pass the arguments. Okay, so format is nothing but a string. Format strings could also be of different types. Okay, it's kind of now leading me to the formatter class, okay, which kind of talks about all the different formats which are basically there. If you will just, I think, hover over it also, it will show you. Okay, so this format string is the first argument to the format method. It contains 3 format specifiers like these, okay, which indicate how the argument which I have passed should be processed and where should they be inserted in the text, okay. And these are very good documentation. It actually gives you like really good examples also to know that, you know, let's say you want to convert it into specific format, how do you really use it, okay. Over here, for example, I have used D. That means I want the D means that the result is formatted as a decimal integer over here. Okay, so this is what it kind of talks about. I'll show you with a bunch of examples. So this will kind of return a simple decimal kind of like a format. Let's say I also, so this argument is int over here. Let's say now I also take argument of double over here, and then what I do is I kind of convert it into floating point over here with the precision of 3 decimals. When you will see the examples, you will understand how this is working. Let's say I write another C. It's not allowing me currently to do that because both the functions are exactly the same. The parameters don't differ. But the moment I do string over here, it will allow me that. Okay. So now over here, let's say this I want with the precision of 2 decimal places. Okay, this kind of defines the precision, and string is being passed. So I will do double dot parse double value. So whatever is being passed as a string will be converted as a double data type, and then it will be taken to 2 precision. So the advantage of doing this method overloading is that now when I will call the functions now, right, I don't really have to bother about the data type that is expected by format number because multiple data types are valid. So let's say if I pass 500, that is also fine. You have to write public. Don't get confused, just keep it public only. This is the concept of access modifiers, which will come later. I don't want to confuse you all. Okay, so this is, let's say I write format number this, then let's say I write format number 89.9934. Okay, and then let's say I also call it once with this 550, and you will see automatically these would get redirected to the correct functions which they have to go to, and it will give you the right output in all the scenarios. 1 second, this is the function we need to execute. Okay, I have not printed any of these results, so that's why they are being executed, but nothing actually got printed. See, now what happened was, this is anything just converting it directly into decimal integer. So that's why 500, it didn't really had anything. So it was 500 only. See, here I said 89.9934, right? This is anyway not going to go in this function call because it is not integer. So it automatically got redirected to the function, which is at line number 22, which was a double value. And here the format that I have put is, I have put %.3f. .3f means it needs to be in a precision of 3 decimal places after the dot. Okay, that's why you will see for 9934 only 993 is left because I only want precision for 3 digits. And when I put 550 as a string, it doesn't go into any of these. It just directly goes into string value. Right here, string value, first I have basically parsed that string into a double data type, and that then double data type is being kind of the same as this one, which is taking precision up to 2 digits after the decimal. That is why you will see For 550, you have 2.00 after it because the output has to be of 2 precision over. Okay, so that is how you can see a very good real example of how formatting works, right? If method overloading would not have been present, you will have to use probably different, function names in order to be able to achieve your output, which would not have been a very readable code, right? You might have started feeling that, oh, there might be different functions only which are present, right? But this way, the code is kept absolutely clean. You don't have to worry a lot, and it automatically, based on the type of parameter that has been passed, it takes up the value. Okay. Do you see these examples also, which is present in the library? This is also nothing but a case of method overloading, right? All the functions have the same name, value of, value of, value of, right? As a person, when you use these functions, you don't really realize that internally method overloading is happening, and to one of these functions, your call is being redirected. Okay. Automatically, based on what parameter you pass, these library codes kind of identify which function call to be really called over here. Okay, so I've shown you both examples. One real example also where we have implemented the concept of method overloading, and you can obviously see in all these library codes also that method overloading as a concept is very, very popularly used. Okay, and if you ever feel that you're not really sure what these functions basically does, just come here, read the documentation. It's an absolutely good documentation that has been written over here, right? You may as well refer the internet also or these documentations to actually understand what is really happening. Okay, so you can see there here the syntax is also mentioned, which is very beautifully mentioned over here. I used the same syntax. I used the %, then I basically put a dot over here. Then I actually put the precision factor, for which precision do I really need the output to be. You can add a bunch of more as well. It can get as complex as you really want it to be. There is no limit as such, right? So feel free to utilize this string.format function as much as you want. I have just given a very simple example on how you can use this and kind of something that represents the use case over here. Okay, it can actually be used kind of for conversion descriptions, and the different formats are basically existing for that as well. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Let me now take up a bunch of questions. For rounding off, Sonal, you have another functions also. Okay. Vinayak says, ma'am, if I define, let's say, int data type as an argument for one function and long for another as a parameter using method overloading. I think the question that you're asking is what I did over here, Vinayak. And just pass in a constant and not a variable while passing the value. What kind of constant? Constant is nothing but this only, right? For example, will function will be called, which function will be called, and is there a preference? So here, when you write 2 and 3, Vinayak, by default, the data types are integers only. Okay, so it should call the first function. Because 2 and 3 by default are integer data types. So until and unless you do convert it into long, right, the long function should not be called. I think the same example is what I have shown here as well. Okay, if you will write both of these, if you're passing int, you will be calling the int function only. Double or maybe long would only be called when you specifically have the long data type mentioned along with that. Okay. I think the simple answer is that 2 and 3 by default are integers only. All right. Everyone understood these concepts? Is this clear to all of you? Anyone with any questions, any doubts? Now is a good time to ask. Because I will give a bunch of examples post this, which you will have to answer for me. Before that, I want to make sure everyone is absolutely clear. Can I get a quick yes from everyone in the chat? Lokesh, Sonal, Sushil, Tony, Roop, Narendra, Omkar. Everything is clear? Awesome. Okay. Now, please just answer a bunch of things for me, which will kind of explain you a lot of concepts as well. Okay. All right. Let's say I play a little bit over here. Go back to, let's say, here only. Okay. Let's say I do int 1 is equal to 10. Int 2 is equal to 20. Let's say I call a function scopes. I pass 1 and 2. Int sum. And then I do sum. And int okay, so let's say this is the piece of code that I have written over here. Now think about it for a minute. What do you think the output will be? $30. Okay, let's check. So this one is a simpler example that I just gave. 30, which is correct as well. You passed 1, you passed 2, you call the function scopes, 10 and 20 is being passed. 10 is basically taken by the one variable. 2 in the variable which is having the value 20 is being taken up by another variable. You add them and you print the result. Very good. Okay, simple. Let's check another case. Now tell me the output for each and every statement, okay? Okay, so this is the next piece of code that is written over here for case 2. I am just seeing if I am missing anything. So this is void, right? And now you have to predict the output for this one. I'll give you all a minute. I need like the answer for all the 4 statements. So give me the answer for all the print statements together. And please make sure you go through some logic also while answering and have a proper reasonability for your answer that you picked up. Okay, let's see. Let me actually do one thing and put this with this. Okay. And then cancel out this so that we can see like a proper way this is happening. Okay. All right. So first of all, you have a variable 1, which is having the value 10. The other variable we're having the value 20. Come to line number 34. It says 1 and 2. The values that are simply being printed over here. So the output should be 10 and 20 only. Which is there? Which is 10 and 20. Okay. Let's go to line number 35. Okay. Now you are basically, this is the main function. Now you are in the swap function. Okay. In the swap function also, there is a variable which is 1 having the value 10. There is a variable 2 having the value 20. Okay. So inside this function, when you print the values, again 10, 20 should be printed. So 10, 20 printed. And then 10, 20 printed. Okay. Now you go to and you do temp is equal to 1. That means there is another variable temp over here, which is now having to take the value which is present in 1. 1 is having 10, so temp is now having 10. Now 1 will basically take the value present in 2. So this will take the value 20. And 2 will take the value which is present in 10. Temp is having 10. So this is done. Okay. And now you print the value of 1 and 2, which 1 is having, so this was already printed. 1 is having 20, 22 is having 10. Okay. And like I said, there is the concept of scoping where these variables 1 and 2 basically are just present within the scope of the swap function. So the moment you complete this function, the existence of all of these variables basically go away and they are not available anymore. Okay. So when you actually come back to line number 36, 1 is still having 10 and 2 is still having 20. So what you actually did was you did the swapping, but you did the swapping of the variables which are local to the swap function. That is why the result of it did not get percolated to the function which is, or to the variables which is present inside main. And hence they remain exactly same. Okay. And this is the concept which I wanted to teach you all and understand that how does the concept of scoping really works. Is this clear to everyone? Was I successful in explaining this concept through this example? Great. Let me know, please, in case any of you have any type of questions. Okay. Then that will be a different concept which works over here. Okay. We will cover that. What's your name, by the way? Code Sam. I think this is not your actual name. Satyam is it? Okay. Don't worry, Satyam. This concept is going to cover as well. Okay. I'm taking everything step by step. We talk about the concept of pass by reference and pass by value it is. Okay. So Java does not have actually both of them. Most of the, for example, if any of you know about this concept of or the language C++, right, you would know that pass by value and pass by reference as a concept both are present in, I would say, C++ as a language, where pass by value and pass by reference means that sometimes you're actually just passing the value inside the variable, and sometimes you're actually passing the entire variable whatsoever to a particular function. Okay, there are two different ways to basically do that, right? But in Java, we do not have both the concept. Hence, you see this kind of a response when you actually, see and when you work with Java. Java is always pass by value. Okay, Java does not work on the concept of pass by reference. Okay, and when we talk about pass by value, what exactly does it mean over here is that whenever you are passing off variables to a particular, I would say, function, or whenever you're passing out values, you're not actually passing the variable, you're simply just passing on a value which is present inside that variable to the function. Okay, but in languages like C++, we have the concept of pass by reference, where when you actually pass, let's say there are two options, you can actually just pass the value inside the variable, or you may pass that entire variable also. So in that case, if you do any changes, they would retain. Yes, there is one exception in this concept, which I think Venkat just talked about, that in Java, when we work with arrays, then the concept of referencing is valid. But that also has a trick and a logic to be understood behind it. It's not just straightforward that arrays have passed by reference. Okay, there's an entire logic that you need to understand for it, which we will do as well. Okay, but we will move step by step. No, Paras, primitive and non-primitive is not too much related into this. But again, like I said, we will talk about all of these things as well. There also comes the concept of static variables and all that we, kind of work with global and local variables as well. Okay, which we will talk about. But for the time being, this much is enough for you to get started, right? There will be a separate class which will kind of go in deep into all these concepts. But understand that by default, Java is always pass by value. Okay, Java as a language does not really support pass by reference. Clear to everyone? Any doubts, any questions? Awesome. So tell me one thing, did we do the Armstrong question in the class? I don't think we have done it. No, right? Let's do that. That question is a very good example of functions, representations, and the use cases of functions. Okay. We have not done it, I suppose. One second. So I'm going to give you a question now. I would need your attention now to be worked on. So now what we'll do is we'll actually solve a question. I'll tell you the problem statement and then you can kind of think about how do you really want to solve it. Okay, so when we talk about Armstrong numbers, a positive integer is basically called an Armstrong number. Okay, if the number is A, B, C, D, it should actually be equal to A, let's say ABC. It should be equal to A to the power n plus B to the power n plus C to the power n. Okay? Where n is the number of digits in the particular number. For example, 153 is an Armstrong number. Why? Because 1 cube plus 5 cube plus 3 cube is basically equal to 153. Okay, so here the 3 factor comes from the fact of number of digits in this particular, I would say, example. Okay, you could have bigger or smaller examples as well, right? For example, let's say 1634 is also an Armstrong number, because 1 cube 4 plus 6 to the power 4 plus 3 to the power 4 plus 4 to the power 4 is also equal to this. Okay, so the question is, given an input number, right, you will be given a particular number and you simply just have to print true or false if it is an Armstrong number or not. So if I give you the input 153, you should be returning true. For example, I give you 570, the output should be false. If I give you 1634, the output should be true. I hope the problem statement is clear to everyone. Now you can take a quick minute to think about how you would solve this. Yes, Sonal, that is what I said as well. Okay. The power is equal to the number of digits. Anyone who was able to do it? Okay, all right. I see a bunch of codes that you guys have sent, and to be honest, those do look correct. Okay, but what I will do is now I will show you a slightly more not correct code, but a more readable code, which will help you to understand, wow, the power of functions do really step in over here. Okay, so I'll show you now a code which is very well written, very easy to understand, and then in future, if you would like to scale it, that code becomes in a single line of code becomes scalable as well. Okay, so currently the question is you have to check whether a number is Armstrong or not. Okay, let's start looking at the solution where so far the question is whether a number is Armstrong or not. Okay, so what I will do is I will just write a function public static Boolean is Armstrong. Okay, and then I just do this. Is Armstrong, very readable code, very good function. Okay. First, to be able to actually do this calculation, I need to know the number of digits. So I will simply write a function. Count digits. Again, keep the name of the functions very, very readable. Here we have used camel casing, which is the preferred casing for Java as a language. Okay. This is the function which will basically give me NOD, number of digits in the particular number that I will pass to it. Now I will create a function which will count the number of digits for me. I will do int NOD is equal to 0. Number of digits are initially 0. I will keep on going to the number one by one. This we have already seen. I will keep dividing the number by 10. Okay. And till the time the number does not become 10, I will keep increasing the number of digits. So this function will basically return the number of digits. For example, let's say for our use case, I am calling this function with the value 1634. Okay. And whatever the output will be, true or false, I will simply print it. Okay, this is how you can directly call the function and the output of that function will be printed. These are just small optimized way to write codes. So I have the number of digits now. So 164, number of digits will basically have 4 because the number was passed as 1634. Now what you will do is ON is the original number over here. Okay. And now ON is basically having 1634. I created another variable which is having the value 1634 because in the end I needed something to compare it with, right? Okay. Now what I will do is till the time the original number N, right, does not become reduced to 0, I will take the last digit of the number, which is you take by mod. So now at this point of time, remainder is basically having 4, which is the very last digit. So you will do 4 to the power 4 over here, which is what? Sum plus equal to math.pow. There's a power function over here, which we write as math.pow over here. Okay. And this will basically, we'll pass remainder and we'll pass the number of digits. So this will basically do 4 to the power 4. Remainder was what? 4, and I need to raise it to the power 4. Sum as a variable, let's keep it outside only because I need to keep updating it. Okay, so sum was initially 0 and now sum will have 4 to the power 4. Okay, and now I will do n is equal to n by 10. That means my number n was 1634, but now it has been reduced to 163. Okay, I go back in this loop again. Is n greater than 0? Yes, it is. So what do I do? Remainder is what? N by 10. N is what? 163. 163 mod 10. You will get 3, which is the last digit. Now you will do 3 raised to the power 4 over here, and you will do plus equal to. So that means this over here will now have 3 raised to the power 4. Math.pow, it takes the value x, which is 3, and it raises to the power NOD, which is 4. And then it adds the results to the sum which we have so far, because it is sum plus equal to. And then we do n is equal to n by 10. So n is now 60. Okay. Now, is n greater than 0? Yes. What do I when I do n mod 10, I basically get 6 in this case. Okay. So when I do here, it will be 6, which is remainder to the power 4. So this is 6 raised to the power 4. Okay. And then I do n is equal to n by 10. So the number is 1 only. Is n greater than 0? Yes. What do I do when I do 1 by 1 mod 10? I basically get 1. And here it will be 1 raised to the power 4, right? Which will basically be added, right? And then I do n is equal to n by 10. So this will be 0. Is n greater than 0? No. So you simply stop at this point. Okay. And after this, what you will do is you will check if the sum that you got by doing all of this calculation is actually equal to ON, which is the original number 1634. Okay. If it is, you will return true, else you will return false. Okay. Being a good programmer, instead of writing these 6 lines of code, you could have just written this as well. Okay. This will basically do this computation, sum equal to original number. If it is true, it will return true, because this is a operator which will check the values, right? So that is why it will only return true or false. If it returns true, true will be returned. If it is false, false will be returned. Let's run this to see if everything is working fine. And it is true, because 1634 is indeed a Armstrong number. Let's pass 131. It's not a Armstrong. Okay, let's pass 153. I think that is an Armstrong number. It is true. It is an Armstrong number. Okay. And do you guys see the power of functions over here? How readable do they really make your code, and how easy and quick it is to kind of understand the logic, what is being represented by the piece of code. Okay. And the last thing which I was saying is how to this kind of way of writing code makes your solution scalable. Let's say in future, now the question is changed and they are not asking you to print or to check whether a number is Armstrong number or not. Okay. They are asking you to print all the Armstrong numbers in a particular range. See how easy would that be? I will simply do public static void print Armstrong numbers. I will pass the range int low, int high, right? For int n is equal to low. Starting from low, n will go up to high, and I will do n plus plus. And constantly, what I will do is I will call the is Armstrong function over here, right? And it will basically return me a Boolean value, right? If the Boolean value returned is true, I will simply print that value or print that number because it is an Armstrong number. See, I just directly called this function over here, and now this function will print all the Armstrong numbers for me, let's say from the range of 100 to 500. So by using a good way or by using the functions in an intelligent way, your functions actually become more scalable. But if you would have just written everything directly in the main function, you will see that your code will not be this much scalable, that by just writing 3-4 lines of code, you're actually able to scale it to a position where you can find all the Armstrong numbers in a range as well. Here low I passed as 100, high I passed as 500, and between 100 to 500, it returned me all the Armstrong numbers, and I simply used the code of the previous question to create the code for this question. I hope this helps you to understand how powerful the concept of functions is. Everyone is clear? Does it really help you to understand? How crucial functions as a concept are? How multiple questions can actually be clubbed together into a single question and how functions represent it? The code is still the same. Most of you have also sent me the same logic in the chat, but my code is way more readable and easier to understand. For a new person, when they will come to my code, they will be like, oh, the logic is so easy. She just simply wrote a for loop, simply wrote a function which returns a true or false and printing it. If they just want to read this function, it is also readable. I just wrote to check a number is Armstrong or not. See, I have also written is Armstrong. So that also represents a Boolean value to be returned. The naming of the function is also very intelligent, right? This function returns a digit, so I don't have to bother about count digit function. This will return the digits, right? And then I'm simply doing the clear to everyone. Maza aaya? Samajh aaya sabko? How powerful concepts as a functions are by using real life examples in questions and also miscellaneous use cases and questions that can come up related to functions. Chalo, badhiya, awesome. I didn't get to see the time. We already finished 2 hours already. Okay, so today we'll just keep it this much, right? I'll try to add a bunch of questions, try solving them using functions. You can also solve the previous questions that you have already done to convert them into functions way to actually understand the concept better. Clear to everyone? Any questions, any doubt? Perfect. All right then. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for attending today's session. I will upload the codes. I will upload the notes as well, right? And I will try to add an assignment also if that's possible, right? And otherwise, I will share a bunch of homework problems anyway, right? Tomorrow or the next class, sorry, we'll start with arrays, and that is when we will start touching upon the lead code questions also. So far, we have not been doing any questions from lead code because we have been doing very basic concepts, so that wasn't required, right? But from arrays, we can actually start our journey from lead code. So please make sure you do have a lead code account. The classes are TTS only, so we are going to next meet on Tuesday. I would recommend all of you to be available on Sunday as well. If it will be possible, I will take a class, extra class on Sunday. We will solve a bunch of questions. The more you practice, the more you understand better. Okay, I know some of the people are not very comfortable with practicing alone, but when they attend the session and when they solve questions with me, they are actually able to solve at least 3-4 questions. So your weekend will be useful. It will be little hectic to attend classes both Saturday and Sunday, but it will be beneficial for you. In any way, the recordings will obviously be available. So like you will anyway obviously have the time to do it. Okay. Ideally, I like to keep all theoretical classes like on the week, and maybe we can club problem solving questions on the weekends. Okay. Vinayak, it is there, but I wanted to kind of kickstart more on the Java content first, because now we are starting with arrays, recursions, and time complexity very soon. That content is heavy. If I will start uploading the CN content with this, so people tend to not do it so early. But still, let me see what is possible. Okay. Did you all like the DBMS content? Anyone who actually has gone through it to be able to say yes or no to that? Okay, all right. Don't worry, more good content is coming. We have very good content on graphs, DP, and everything else as well. To be honest, way better than what you'll find on the internet also. Okay, so we will cover all of that, just that we'll see the right pace. Let me see what's the status on the CN content. Let me ask the team, and then the content will be uploaded as well. Okay. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Bye bye. Enjoy.